Welcome to the Rock Solid Families podcast. I'm Linda Hutchinson here with my man, Merle. How are you, babe?
I'm doing pretty good. A whole lot better than people I've been seeing on Facebook lately.
What do you mean by that?
Well, as we are recording this, we're just a day or so after the great debate.
I heard somebody say that the self-care would be not watching the debate.
Right? Yeah.
Good self-care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in case you are tuning in late in your life about like if this happens to be
archives,
2025 or something,
then you'll know what the results are.
Yeah, we are, I don't know, what are we, like 55 days or something from the election, and so we had our presidential debate between Kamala Harris. Am I saying that right? Is Kamala? I've heard it like 5 different ways. Yeah. I think Trump says it wrong intentionally.
Yeah. Well, and we don't even know.
And Donald Trump.
And we don't even know if this is the last one. So if you're watching this in the archives, then maybe do they have another one? Are they going to get back together? This is the first time they've met.
You sound like they're dating. Are they going to get back together?
It didn't sound right, did it? But yeah, it is pretty scary when you consider that these are adults acting this way. And this is what we're... I don't even remember how many million of people they said, 90 million people or something that tuned in.
Yeah, it was pretty good size.
And so, what are we teaching the next generation? Common sense and the Bible are pretty clear on this topic, right? About how we should treat one another. And so that's really our topic today is really, where is civility? The death of civility. We're not really going to get into the political realm as far as like who should you vote for, but we're talking about what does God call us to do? How does he want us to show up in elections, in debates, in life, in conversation, in conflict? And so I think that he's got some opinions on that. God does.
And there's a trickle down effect too. Because you got the debate and you got, the just rudeness of that. And then the next day on Facebook, and I'm just using that as just one of the platforms.
One of many.
But there are many, and people are just disturbed.
Yeah.
And they're disturbed, and what I mean by that is like they get back into the same lack of civility.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody who disagrees with them, they're instantly just chastising, and the name-calling just ripples right down through them, and you're like, at the end of the day, this is Scripture is very, very clear on this as to what ultimately will happen, and that is, Matthew 25 or 12 is just one example. Matthew 12:25 is just knowing their thoughts. Jesus said to them, "Every kingdom divided against itself is laid waste. No city or house divided against itself will stand." And that's just plain and simple. Like, we have to find common ground. We have to find some commonality, and gone is that right now. It's me against you kind of thing. And I don't know, like, we're going to get into that part, but we're also going to talk about what is this doing to our kids,
right? Because
that's so much of our work is next generation work.
And part of the reason why we're doing this show is we feel powerless at times when we see something displayed that disturbs us or we don't agree with. And so we're going to tell you what are some practical biblical responses for us as Christ followers and how he wants us to show up and respond to really division and ugly and things like that. But before we do,
I know you want to do sponsors, but I got to tell a story before I forget.
Story? What kind of story?
You and I went for a walk the other night.
Yeah. We
went for a walk, and part of where we walk, you got to be on a kind of a main state route for a little bit, and it's later evening.
Yeah, we're relaxing,
we're just
chatting,
talking, we're like minding our own business, and this guy comes by in a truck, so we're walking into him, right? So he's facing us, and out where we live, it is very common for someone to wave at you.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially guys in trucks, like,
just
good old boy, right?
Yeah. And so you kind of give it back, and that's good. Yeah. Good stuff. This guy...
He waved all right.
He waved with the middle bird finger, and I kind of looked up, and I just was like... And I literally just went... Like, I got nothing for you, buddy. Like, I don't even know where this is from.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
So he flipped us off.
Yeah. You didn't know him.
I did not know him. So,
you didn't it wasn't like you were in the middle of the road, like taking up a space, right?
And I'm like, we got a civility problem here, And so, like, that's the kind of stuff, like, I don't know who peed in his Wheaties earlier in the day, but you're like,
taking it on you.
Wow. Now it could have just been a joke, right? It could have been a joke, and that, whatever. Like, I can laugh as well as the next guy at that, but it's just like, you could have been silly and acted like a clown to be a joke,
okay,
too.
so let's think about this, because it could be the fact that you were a teacher in the school system for 32 years. Okay?
Trying to get revenge.
I'm just saying, it could have been an old student. It could have been one of your parents that realized that was you. And man, they have some bone to pick with you. I'm just saying.
But they didn't know who I was coming up at 50 miles an hour.
I'm not going to give details, but I was with somebody just today. Okay. And we ran into a couple people that I knew. Okay. 2 out of 3 people I knew. Okay. Yeah. Now the person I was with did not know any of them. So I kind of said hi and I introduced them, and you could feel the coldness in one of the 2. The other one was like, "Oh my gosh, Linda." The other person was like, "Whoa," you could tell. Yeah. That girl still has a bone to pick with you.
With me?
No. It was me. But I'm telling you, this was somebody that did not agree with a decision that was made in our church probably 10, 15 years ago. And she still, you could see, I mean, she wouldn't give me eye contact. She wouldn't give me the time of day. It was almost like I rudely interrupted her, and that I was bothering her. Yeah. And man, it was like cold shoulder. Yeah. So we're talking about the death of civility, and what do we do about that as Christ followers? How do we respond? So, but before we do,
now we can thank our sponsors. We want to thank Maxwell Construction, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and the Hoosier Ice House for being sponsors of the Rock Solid Family Podcast. Guys, we hope you appreciate the messages that we get out. Most of our messages come from what we actually are walking through or experiencing kind of in real time in our office, and so they're not things that we just made up out of a book or something like that. So we just want you to hopefully they hit home with you. And as we always ask, share the shows if they're of value to somebody else that you would think benefit. Please share it.
So part of our work is working with parents and families, and even ones that are going through divorce. And so we do a monthly class. Some of them people are court ordered, maybe co-parenting situations through the Dearborn County courts. And so we're not having a class in September. So the next one would be the 4th Saturday in October, which is October 26th. But hon, I bring that up because we teach civility in that class. Yeah. We teach about how, okay, you may have had ugly divorce and you may not agree with their parenting style, but man, for the good of your child, could we come on some common ground of values and goals that you want to initiate or to see in your child? And so can we work on that, And we have found that the people who come are thankful because it's like they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like they're carrying this resentment and this anger and this unforgiveness, and it's eating them up.
Yeah, well, there's no progress made, right? Like we will have people, it's been this way for the last 11 years, for the last 10 years. And you're like,
and how's that working for you?
Yeah, like, aren't you exhausted? I'm exhausted in the first 5 minutes of it. So guys, I mean, some of this we're going to do just a quick little review. Like there are key words that are important to having in any relationship. And these words, the value of them or the meaning of them, they have fallen either out of favor. Like some people, like that's back in the Andy Griffith days or something, And but it's like there's something to them, and when you don't have them, you get to see what we're getting to see. And I mean, these are words like respect.
Okay, and I want to stop on that word. Yeah, because there are so many people out there, even Christ followers, who say that respect is only deserved and earned. And God is very clear on that you are honor one another out of reverence for Christ. Like, he's saying it's not about that person and what they're doing or what they've done. It's about who you are and how you show up to that conversation. And so unconditional respect is similar to unconditional love. God gave us both to us, and he's asking that from us. And so that is, you don't have to agree. You don't have to trust them. You don't have to be in a relationship with them. But man, when you show up into a conversation or just meet somebody on the street or drive past them, we're asking you, and God's calling us to respect one another.
Now, and I know this is what you're saying, but let's also clarify this. Unconditional love means you can love somebody, but you don't always like them, or you don't like a behavior or action of theirs, right? unconditional respect, you respect them. It doesn't mean you respect every decision or action they make.
Agree,
all right? And so you separate the person, the sin from the sinner, right? You've got to separate that. And so to your point, unconditional respect is the idea that that person is of equal value as a human to God as you are.
Yeah.
No better, no worse. And so that's that whole idea. Like, it is so hard for us to separate.
Yeah.
In this political world, it's so hard to separate the idea that I could be a Democrat or a Republican and have a slightly different thought than someone else.
Even if they're a murderer, even if you think what they're doing is morally wrong, God is saying, I still love them. And I still want them in relationship with me. And so when we don't show up that way, when we don't present that way, we're really a hypocrite, and we really do more damage to the gospel and the good news of Christ than good. So
and again, like I see all this stuff where they people will project one person as devil and one person as an angel, and I'm like, the devil, I'm making the assumption there that they think that person's going to hell or whatever, and I'm like, who are you, right? That what a judgment to make on somebody. And so we just need to be careful. Like, let's have some civil discourse, right, where let's disagree on the topic of policy, the action or whatever. But this other stuff is just insanity. And here's kind of the scary part on so much of this. The true enemy's out there, Satan, maybe even internationally, right, like other countries. They love this. They love this. The best way to beat another team is to get the team to fight amongst themselves. And they lose their focus. And that's exactly what we are falling for as a nation. And if you don't come to grips with this and understand, whoa, we have commonality here, we've got to, bring that. And we're going to talk about, what that looks like.
Manners, being polite.
Overrated.
I still think that if we teach that and we show that and model that for our kids, we have a much better world, a much better home than just that backstabbing and, infighting that we have.
I had, gosh, I don't even know how old she is. She's probably, I don't want to say the wrong thing. She's in her upper 40s, I can safely say. She was a student of mine.
Okay.
And I have to meet with her concerning an insurance thing with my dad. And she was a student of mine.
Yeah.
And
she's still calling you Mr. Hutchinson?
She stopped in the middle of our conversation. She goes, I just have to clear this up. Do I call you Merle or Mr. Hutchinson? It feels, and I just said, hey, I'm no longer your teacher.
Yeah.
You at this point, you can drop the Mr.
Yeah.
But that was brought into her, right? She was raised that way.
Yes.
And here she is, her kids are grown and everything, and she still feels the respect to use that Mr. And I mean, that was it was kind of cool and refreshing.
Yeah. Well, and it goes with another word that we want to talk about, and that is authority. You will always have someone in authority over you in life, period. I mean, and if you keep fighting that and pushing against that with disrespect and ill-mannered, you're going to find yourself miserable in life. You're going to find yourself in jail or, overdose or whatever. And so my point is that teach your children and for you to understand what authority looks like. And that's a perfect example. I still struggle with my parents' friends calling them by their first name,
right?
Because they always have looked at an authority over me, or I want to respect them, and so it's ingrained in us, but it's lost today.
Yeah.
Like when you have a child calling their mom and dad by their first name, we're not showing authority and respect. And if you allow it, then you're kind of teaching this discord.
I mean, if we call ourselves Christian, the entire Christian faith is based on the idea that there is one and only one authority.
Lord. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the reasons why it is so important for us to teach authority levels and hierarchy of power, so to speak, is so that we learn to practice it, so that when we know we're in the presence of somebody, that we are relatively familiar and comfortable with the idea of submitting to their authority. And so how in the world could you never, ever, ever practice respecting an authority and then think you're going to respect Christ.
Yeah.
Like
sure.
it's a practice sort of thing. So
Yep.
again, another idea there. How about some of the things that we see? Here's some terms that we're seeing a lot of in the last probably 5 years. You and I have heard this in our practice more than all of the years prior. Narcissism. I mean, think about that on how that word comes up.
Everybody's a narcissist.
Everybody's a narcissist, you know.
Oh, you don't know my husband. You don't know my dad. He was a narcissist, yeah.
And again, like, you know, we all have levels of narcissism, and that's another way of saying that is we're selfish.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. And so but it is definitely almost a badge of honor with many of us now that no one's going to tell me that I can't get what I want. Right. And so that's definitely something we see more of these days.
And the opposite of that would be having empathy and humility. So we put ourselves in someone else's shoes and looking through their eyes, you know, and that brings civility, which is another one of these words that we've lost today. You know, really people will say, oh, that's just who I am. No, that's how you're showing up, and that's what you're choosing to do. And so civility is practicing the fact that if I'm going to treat you with respect and kindness and, you know, my mouth I'm going to keep in check, which I don't always do the greatest job of. But, you know, the Bible says out of the overflow of our heart, our mouth speaks. And so when we spew this yucky, it's inside us.
Yeah. How about here's another one that I think this word's been, it took on a different direction. The word pride. We used to have pride in our team, pride in our school, pride in our country. And so these are all pride factors based off of people, what it represented and the people who came before. Because we all stand on the shoulders of somebody.
Yeah.
Right? We all stand on the shoulders. And so I go to this school, and so this school is great because of all the many people that came before it and made it great. Right? Yeah. And so, but now it's not that kind of pride so much. Now it's self-pride.
Yeah.
I am great. Look what I did. I accomplished this. I am great at this. And to the point where, you know, everybody wants to be celebrated with all their trophies up on the mantle saying, look what I did.
Yeah. And so I believe, hon, we need to go into some advice of like recommendations of how do we get rid of this? How do we move past this? How do we show our kids, right, that there is an ultimate authority, that we do need to treat people with kindness and respect. And you know, you mentioned number one being misguided authority, that no one's going to be the boss of me. And honestly, that is the very first step in the 12-step program when you're trying to break pride or anger, addiction, or alcoholism. It is literally like surrendering, like I am powerless.
Yeah.
Like I am not the ultimate authority of my life. There is an ultimate authority, and I'm going to claim it for me as a Christian, Christ. But man, this misguided authority can get us into a world of trouble.
And the key is there, misguided, because there's not going to be a lack of authority. It'll be misguided. In other words, you put yourself on the pedestal. And so this is, again, when we hear people say, well, my God would never do that. And when you hear those phrases, you recognize that they start creating their own picture
or my
of
truth.
God.
So here we go. If you're a parent, okay, please align yourself with healthy authority in your child's life. So please don't badmouth the coach, the teachers, don't undermine your spouse,
the police,
all of those things, the principal. If you're badmouthing them or you're, you know, stabbing them in the back, then you're teaching your child this lack of civility and this disrespect and discord that is just going to destroy your home and your family.
This does not mean that there can't be bad teachers, bad police officers, or bad other people, right? And so when we do recognize that somebody is out of line, then we go after that particular. With
civility.
Right. we go after that issue, that particular person, versus like all of the police are bad or all of the teachers are bad, because this is where we really get that jaded view and we start to get two sides, us against them.
And then we spew it on social media, right? So we can kind of, this gang effect of trying to get everybody on our side, right? And this anarchy of we're going to go and storm the Capitol, or we're going to go rob the school, or, you know, we're just going to show up and show them. wow, please stop. This is not helping our nation, our families, our communities, our schools, our churches.
It's not helping our kids, guys.
It's not helping our kids.
That's our point. Like we are as American as we can be. Like we love this country, but we also, Lynn and I, the work that we do, we always say everything we do is generational. And so saving this country is not by being uncivil, right? It's like what are of all countries, this country has more opportunities in place to do things well, to change policy, to change law, to get people elected. We have more opportunity to do that, and so those are the routes that we take versus some of the things that we've done.
You know, and I'm just going to speak to this because there was a righteous anger in the Bible. I mean, Jesus turned the tables in the temple when he saw them kind of disrespecting his place. And my point is, though, that God handled it, Jesus handled it in a way that still honored the Lord, honored God. And so we're asking you, if you have a righteous anger, if someone has been molested or abused or, mistreated or lied to or whatever, I'm not saying you can't be angry about that, but I'm saying handle it in the right way so you show up and don't do more damage than good.
Yeah. Another thing, guys, we have to be careful of, and that we'll talk about this as we move on, lacking common values. Like I don't want the school to be the teacher of our family values. I want the school to reinforce values that we believe are important in our home, but we have to have those together. Now, if you're going to bring a society together, the more common the values are, the more you're going to gel and things are going to work together. So I've said this before in shows, and I contend that this has been disastrous. Celebrate diversity has been disastrous. We should celebrate similarity, and we should respect diversity. Right? And so we have to look at black, white, yellow, red. It doesn't matter. All of us together, like there are so many common things. We're trying to raise kids. We're trying to put food on the table. We're trying to do things well. That's what we have in common with our brothers, all right? Not skin color.
Yeah. And I will say that we've seen a lot of families and parents who have said, okay, well, the school is not reinforcing the values in our home. And maybe it is things that are important to you. And so you say, okay, then we're going to pull our kids out and we're going to homeschool them. Okay. But still civility. Okay. You don't throw the school under the bus because they disagree with you or because they're limited in what they can share or do. But it still is important that we agree to disagree in a civil manner and respectful way.
So when we talk about the what motivates some of this lack of civility, and one of the underpinnings of all of this, you have to recognize is fear. Fear that we're going to lose something, right? And so when we become fearful, you and I know when we work with people, the amygdala, the emotional brain, right, goes into survival mode. And survival mode is really all about how can I win, right? And so if I have people in a building and all of a sudden somebody yells fire and there's no drill, but that's been practiced, people will trample each other to get out. Or whatever it takes, I can't worry about you, I've got to get me out. And it takes an awareness and training to go, how can we get everyone out and drop the fear down? And so you have so many people responding with this lack of civility. They're just, we're walking over top of people, and you have to understand this is fear-driven. It's fear-driven.
Absolutely. And then there's poor modeling, more is caught than taught. So our kids are watching, and this cultural breakdown didn't happen just overnight. And so we've witnessed multiple generations now act this way and teach the next generation the same bad social skills. And so our job as adults, if you're showing up, I don't think there's many kids that are listening to our podcast, but if there are,
punishment,
go ahead and you model. But as adults, we're called to model this. And when we're bad-mouthing somebody on the phone, or we're flipping somebody off on the road, or we're, throwing eggs at somebody's car, like we're showing our kids this discord that is going to be generational, and it's going to have an impact way down the road if we don't stop it somewhere.
We've had to be careful because, as you said, more is caught than taught. Like we've joked before that when we're all in a good mood, we're pretty sarcastic around our house.
Yeah.
And that sarcasm, when you're doing it around an 8, 9, 10-year-old, they're absorbing it.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, they say something sarcastic to you when you're not in the right mood, and it all gets messy, you know. And you're like, so you know, we modeled that. We've had to learn to apologize to our kids. Like, okay, wait, that one's on me.
Yeah.
But moving forward, here's what we do.
You know what we've also been seeing, Hun, and especially with our younger kids, is because they don't understand how to resolve conflict and how to disagree in a civil way. Anytime you disagree with a child or you correct a child, they will come to somebody and say, they're yelling at me. They're yelling at me. And it's crazy because I never raised my voice. You know, I didn't throw something at them. But because I disagreed, I'm yelling at you.
Yeah.
And so we've really got to model this. How do we work through this? And what is that making you feel like? And what do we do about that? Because the answer is not just giving them their way and never having conflict or disagreement, because then they're going to just see that later on in life and it's going to show up in ugly ways. But we got to model for our kids how to resolve conflict, how to disagree in a healthy way.
You know, one thing that's led to the increase, and I'm going to use the word again, but just selfishness or narcissism, one thing that's led into it is this whole promotion of an entitlement mindset. Everybody gets a trophy, right? And so you deserve this, you know, because you were just part of it. And so, and that all came with, good intentions to our 5-year-olds on the soccer field. It should have stayed right there. And continuing to promote that entitlement just gets us in trouble. Excuse me.
Don't choke to death. You know, you're right. It is cute when it's little kiddos, right? And they get a snack after every game and all that stuff. And so where do we break that where they don't expect it, right? And so all of a sudden we're handing that 16-year-old their brand new car and their brand new phone, and they're allowed to stay up as late as they want, and, you know, because they're allowed to and they feel like they are entitled to it. So let's not promote entitlement. And then this last one, Hun, is really about technology and the fact that we're not giving our kids examples of really interacting with real human beings. And technology is replacing real human beings. And so we're connected, quote unquote, online, but relationships take time and practice. And so the more we're on our phones or our tablets or our game systems, we're more self-serving and less prepared and trained for social skills.
I don't have to learn the give and take back and forth. I even did as a little experiment because I was in a discussion with another guy about AI. And he was saying, well, you know, this AI is bad because everything comes with a slant. And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe, but maybe not. I said, I know you can actually choose the slant. And so I actually played with AI and I wrote 3 articles. And I said, write it from this perspective. And I sent them to him. Because he was like, oh wow, I could make it sound like a, you know, a conservative, a liberal, like whatever I wanted to by directing it.
So we're real quick just going to say, okay, this is what we're asking from you to do. And so get a piece of paper. One of them is be more intentional about teaching civility and about how we resolve conflict and cooperate with one another. Like use those moments where you're in disagreement to sit down and say, okay, what do we do about that? You know, our 16-year-old challenged me last night about something that I did that he saw as disrespectful. And you know what? He was right. I did something, I threw something away of his that he had purchased with his own money. And that, I'm sure, did sound...
It wasn't his car, was it? Is that what happened?
It was a piece
again?
of clothing.
Yeah.
But the point is that he saw that as disrespectful. And I had to agree with him. You're right. And so I'm sorry for disrespecting your stuff. And so here's what I'm asking from you, you know? So we talked about the give and take of respect. And so I need to do better and he needs to do better, which leads to number 2, building a foundation, right?
Yeah, the value foundation. You hear us talk about this all the time. We do this both within a marriage. So we want couples to build the foundation of values, all right? But then once we start to work on a family, we want that entire family to be very clear on what is valued in that home. And so, you know, here we are as a Christian ministry, we're going to let our kids know very early that we're going to use God's word as a foundational component of what we do. And then we have to put words in it that make sense, like respect and love and all these kinds of things. But but you have to build that value foundation, and you've got to be intentional about it.
The next one is building empathy and teaching empathy and demonstrating empathy. And so, man, I can't imagine how hard that was when your teacher popped that quiz on you, you know, or I can see that you're upset that you failed that test, or I know you're disappointed because we're not going out to eat tonight. So like, build that empathy, show that you're hearing and seeing them and connecting instead of that discord and that division.
Yeah, you can do this, guys, when your kids are even little, and they're very much into their selfish nature. Then to even talk about like when something tragic happens in a cartoon, you know, like maybe the house gets blown down by the wolf, you know. I wonder how those pigs felt when that happened.
How did Bambi feel? I remember crying at that movie.
Oh, come on, you're a wimp.
Seriously, I remember crying at that movie. Like, seriously, this is a Disney film and his mom already died, you know? So, it teaches empathy and helping them to understand feelings.
This one, guys, how's this even leaving us, right? Like, how did this one leave the scene? The golden rule, treat others the way you would want to be treated. And so, you know, I can tell you that when I watched that debate, that's not how anyone wants to be treated. And so if you did, you'd feel like somebody just tried to hit you. And so you would respond in a probably defensive manner. So the idea that I'm going to weigh my words, I'm going to think twice. This guy who flipped me off, I don't even know who he is, right? But I would have no desire to stand up and flip him off, like, because
if
I wouldn't
that was
want
you,
that.
If you're listening and that was you, like, let him know.
I would say just come and let's talk it out. Like, if I did do something, like, let me know. Like, and I think that that's part of that, hon. Like, how about we get out from the truck? How about we get out from social media? How about, and let's just sit down and say, hey, you know, I'm sure I've offended more than I care to admit in life, but let's just work through this.
And lead with I statements like, I'm really struggling, or I still hold on to this, instead of like, you did this, you did that, because then the defenses go up. But strike a balance, by the way, of really owning our own behavior, teaching the ownership of behavior, saying, you know, I've been angry at you for years, but that's not fair. Like, I haven't even shared that with you. And so I'm going to admit that I have been holding on to this grudge and this unforgiveness for a long time, and it's built up a lot of bitterness. And so I'm going to own that. That's huge, and teach and model for your family.
Well, I think ownership of all behaviors is extremely important. We are struggling with that with our kid, right? Like, and so this is where you stop denying, and because it gets into the deny turns into a lie. Right. And so it's like, man, more than the action that may have taken place, the trust that is destroyed. And so when we start to walk around and we don't trust people, everything becomes very jaded. Right. And so we have to own our bads, right, and not go crazy over trying to hide those, right? So if even as a politician, you know, it's really difficult to ever hear a politician say, you know, that policy that we enacted, that was not a very good policy.
Or that person that's against me, like on the opposite side of the aisle, like, they're a good guy. Like, you don't hear that very often. And so we're just saying, please strike a balance of the positive and the negative. Don't always be the negative Nelly. Don't always like just try to smooth people and lie through your teeth. Like, we want genuine, authentic, transparent, honest conversation. And so, you know, and this goes with our kids too. They're not always going to be doing the right thing, and they're not always doing the wrong thing. And so strike that balance of inflating and deflating our kids. We don't want to give a trophy for every event, but we don't want to beat them down either and make them feel like they can never please us. Right.
Well, the last thing, guys, and I think this allows all of us to stay in the game, right, without getting completely frustrated. We know how this story ends, right? We know that good will prevail over evil. We've had that promise given to us. And even if you weren't a Christian, you actually know how these things play out. You watch. And so one of the things that you can do with your kids is show them, look, if you continue to be rude or disrespectful or lack civility, here's the pathway that I can show you from other people who've gone before you where they are now. And so it is so powerful as a teaching tool to say, we've done this with drugs, with alcohol. Like, listen, if you choose to do this, I can't write a guarantee, but I can give you a pretty good picture of where this is headed. And so the idea of telling them how the story will end at least starts to give them a visual representation of what that behavior leads to.
So as we move forward, our challenge for ourselves and teaching our kids is really be mindful of the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is not a bunch of fruits. It's the characteristics that come from when the Holy Spirit indwells in us, and it shines out bright in the darkness. It's that love and joy and that peace and that patience and that kindness and that goodness and that faithfulness and that gentleness and that self-control. All of those things are of the Spirit, of the Holy Spirit. And when He lives inside us, it should be coming out of us because out of the overflow of our heart, our mouth speaks. And so we want that to be in our words and our actions and our attitude. So let's really try to do better because there's enough darkness and evil and ugly and discord in the world. Man, let's be the light in the darkness.
Well, it's a great opportunity, guys. And this is not about being holier than thou and all of these kinds of things. This is actually about teaching our kids about civility so that they can learn to keep their country together because there is a greater enemy outside of this, right? And if we don't keep the focus on what the actual enemy is, we will devour each other. And sometimes we almost feel righteous in doing that. And you just got to understand, like, well, how's that going to work for you when half of your team is gone?
Yeah, so that reminds me of that verse again, Matthew 12:25, where it says, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And so that's our nation, that's our community, that's our school, that's our church, that's our homes. And also you mentioned, if you keep on biting and devouring each other, you're going to destroy one another. And that's what the enemy wants. So let's build unity. That's what our Synergy program is about, our before school Bible study, where we bring all these students, these middle school students together. There's 20 different churches, a lot of unchurched kiddos. And we're saying, hey, Christ can be that light in the darkness. It can be your friend. It can be the values that you build your life on, is what He has shown us. He came on earth to show us that. So let's go out and do that today, please.
All right. So,
need you.
Guys, hopefully this was a little inspiring, like you go home, and move in a slightly different direction, and mostly just awareness. Like, what is coming out of our mouth? What are we teaching our kids? So,
and again, this show is timely, because we're entering in such a divisive season of our nation and our world today. And so please, please lead with civility, lead with the fruit of the Spirit, guys, so that God is pleased and He's glorified. No matter who you vote for, no matter who wins, Lord, ultimately we know that He wins.
To just remark, to your point, this whole idea of, I've heard people say, if we don't get this election right, we will lose everything. And I really have to caution that statement from the idea of God uses all of our leaders, all right?
Good, bad, and ugly.
Good, bad, ugly, whether we agree with them or disagree with them. And the idea that you would be so defeated by that, you are taking God off the throne. You may not like a particular thing, but don't remove God from the throne. He's already given us the peace to know that, hey, I got this, guys. I got it.
Okay. Yeah. So don't put your hope in a candidate or a decision. Let's put our hope in the one that will never, ever let us down, and that's Jesus Christ.
All right. We want to thank our sponsors, Maxwell Construction, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and the Hoosier Ice House. We also want to thank all of you guys. Hey, if there is some tension, some battle going on in your life, and if there's something we can do to help, please reach out to us, 812-576-7625. Also, you can check out what we're doing here on our webpage at rocksolidfamilies.org. Newsletter just went out, so that's
social
fresh
media
out there. So
we have a new Instagram page, Rock Solid Families. So check that out and follow us. You'll get all the latest.
About that. Like, I don't even know how to use it.
Yeah. So anyway, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
All right. So thanks again for listening to Rock Solid Families Podcast, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day. And stop fighting with each other. Rock Solid Families wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. Casey's has grown to be one of the largest and most unique garden centers and gift shops in the Cincinnati tri-state area. Whether you are looking to take on that next landscape project or simply add a little home decor to your house, Casey's has you covered. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Call them today at 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home. Rock Solid Families wants to thank Maxwell Construction for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. For over 30 years, Maxwell Construction has been a leader in turning dreams into realities, building schools, banks, restaurants, and many other commercial and public facilities. Maxwell Construction has made it their priority to not just build buildings, but to build into their community. So if you have any construction needs, call them at 812-537-2200.
Rock Solid Families would like to thank Hoosier Ice House for being a proud sponsor of the Rock Solid Families podcast. In the heart of historic Lawrenceburg, Indiana, the Ice House is at the corner of Vine and High Streets. The historic building evokes a feeling of comfort with spacious indoor and outdoor dining, a large bar, and comfortable dining areas. Large enough to host parties, yet intimate enough to feel like your favorite neighborhood restaurant. So thank you again for the Hoosier Ice House for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast.